I will introduce the moderator for this session, Isaac Brunn, who is with UM News and United Methodist Communications.
In the spirit of the conversation, let's now hear from delegates from Europe, Asia, and Africa. Therefore, I would like to introduce the Reverend Oli Berg. This is Superintendent of Denmark Annual Conference, Europe. Then the Reverend Betty Kasadi Musau, Director of Communication, North Katanga Episcopal Area. And the Reverend Igmedio Domingo, this is Superintendent of Manila Area. So each of them will speak for 5 to 7 minutes, then we will open the floor for questions. Reverend Oli Berg will start.
Thank you. May I just for good measure say that my bishop is not aware that I'm a district superintendent. I hope nobody tells him. Dear fellow Methodists, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and share a European Central Conference perspective on the present situation of our church, on homosexual practice, and what we're going to do moving into the General Conference 2020. Let me start by stating the most important part of my presentation first. What does Europe hope will come from our next General Conference? I think we hope that we stay together as a denomination by giving each other freedom to adapt to our different missional contexts. If that is not possible, and many things indicate that it is not, if we have a split, then we ask the very technical thing that the annual conference be the place where the Methodists determine their future affiliation. Let me come back to why. But before, just add that we Europeans also wholeheartedly support that a structure be created that gives the US a place to do the adaptive work that the central conferences do for Methodists outside the US. The United Methodists of Europe are united and divided at the same time. What unites us is our Wesleyan theology, is the connectional structure of our church, and many decades of working together across borders on our continent. This has happened within and between central conferences. It has happened from one annual conference to another and from one local church to another. The European Methodists are proud Methodists, and we place great value on the connectedness of our denomination. The connectedness, has had a profound impact of our understanding of what church is and what mission should be. We're also united as European Methodists in the basic condition of our missional context, that in all the countries where we serve, we are everywhere a very small minority. The population of Europe, from Ireland in the west to the Ural Mountains in the east, from Norway in the north and Sicily in the south, is about 741 million people. The United Methodists are about 65,000 confessing members and maybe 100,000 population in 30 different countries and annual conferences. The diversity of these small annual conferences, of course, comes from the many different contexts in which we do mission. The numerous historical, political, and cultural differences of the many different nations in Europe and their different languages has shaped our different interpretations of both Scripture and church life. It has, just like in the US, just like in the Philippines and throughout the African continent. In Europe are very different histories through the 20th century, with 2 world wars and 50 years of being divided by the Cold War, has produced cultures that perceive the question of homosexual praxis very differently. In my country of Denmark, we were the first, or rather our government was, in the world that created a legal foundation for a civil, non-religious partnership or marriage 30 years ago. And in 2011, the dominant Lutheran Church in Denmark decided to create a ritual for same-sex religious marriages. Similar developments have taken place in the other Nordic countries, and most European countries have, if not religious, then some form of legal partnership law for same-sex couples. In most of Western Europe, the population sees this issue as a human rights issue, and the vast majority of people under 40 understands opposition to full inclusion of LGBTQA+ people as bigotry. On the other hand, in countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Russian Federation, the governments and the dominant culture discriminates against these people. I shouldn't say these people, LGBTQA+ people. The positions on the issues of homosexual practice of the United Methodist churches in Europe follows more or less the same geographical lines. I think it's fair to say that majorities in the Methodist churches of Norway, Denmark, Germany, Switzerland, and Austria would have welcomed the one church plan that would have given them freedom to minister fully with LGBTQA+ people. However, or rather, moreover, it would also have made it possible for individual pastors and congregations to act in this question according to their conscience. Reactions to the 2019 session of the General Conference have been very negative in these countries. Roundtable conversations are taking place right now. Commissions have been set up to look into our possibilities of becoming fully inclusive churches inside or outside the UMC. The situation of the Switzerland, France, North Africa annual conference is the most complicated, as the annual conference there gathers people from big European cities, from Muslim countries, and a number of rural conservative churches in France. In Eastern Europe, the churches have a much more positive perspective on the General Conference 2019 and the traditional plan. They are more conservative, and in places like Russia, they like the traditional plan very much. They say that the outcome that came from the General Conference 19 was the only one that made it possible for them to do their mission. So they tell us. The Eastern European annual conferences are poor and dependent on support from the general church and from the richer and theologically conservative but socially liberal Methodist churches in Western Europe. Our present connectional structure means that Germany and its 3 annual conferences form one central conference. The 14 annual conferences of the Nordic, Baltic, and Eurasia countries form a central conference. And the 15 countries and their annual conferences of South and Central Europe form the 3rd of our 3 central conferences in Europe. The 2 of these conferences, as you heard, are multinational. They contain all the United Methodists in Europe outside Germany. They are as divided on the issue of homosexual praxis as is the General Conference, which would mean that if the General Conference places this issue on the agenda of the central conferences in the future, we would be in the same kind of trouble as we are now, just in a new place. So, let us stay together, give each other contextual freedom, or if we can't, make the annual conference the place where we determine our future. Thank you.
Good afternoon, church. I am going to share the experience, perspective on the African hope for the church. My name is Betty Kazadi Musau. I'm a clergy from North Katanga Annual Conference communicator. The hope for the church for which I have been the product is unity. Unity based on mission and ministry. I am one of the alumni from Africa University. I am a doctorate from St. Paul School of Theology. Unity based on mission and ministry. Today, I am the impact of the mission and ministry. I am here to share with you that from the College of Bishops' last meeting in Zimbabwe, they came up with a statement on the unity of the church. With the unity of the church incarnate in the community, fully engaged in the community, it transforms lives. It promotes well-being of community members. It promotes visibility of the United Methodist witness in the community. Hope for the church is based on mutual listening. As an African delegate, I've been attending this is almost 3 general conferences. Humanly speaking, it's better to listen. It's better to be listened. Some of the time, it's a challenge to listen. As a church, from African perspective, we need to develop and promote mutual listening from both contexts, not only one context. My hope for the future of the church is to maximize Methodist witness in the community within the context. We have the assets to develop witness in our own community. In such a time like this, I always remember the Old Testament scholar, Walter Brueggemann. He wrote a book on prophetic imagination. He's calling us today to be prophets at a time like this, where we need to bring again alive mission and ministry in our own context at a time like this. Because we need to incarnate Christ in our community. At such a time like this, we need to share information to dismiss misunderstanding. This is very important. Some of the time, we come without knowledge. We come without much more education on different issues, on different matters. And it brings prejudice. But as a church, we need mutual learning. We need mutual education. Thank you.
I am honored and privileged to join you today to represent the Philippine Central Conference in this panel. We seek to assert our rights within our connection and our desire to be included as an equal part of the global United Methodist Church. Not just seen and treated as subordinate member of our faith community, friends of Jesus, good day to all. Our vision for the United Methodist Church in the Philippines. Our vision as a church in the Philippines is strongly founded and deeply anchored in the visionary prayer of Jesus, that they may be all one. In John 17, we are one in mission, ministries, and service to all people, especially the marginalized and excluded who are in need of God's compassionate love. Our vision of unity in mission is grounded in our unique Filipino culture and political context, wherein we continue to struggle against colonial influences. It is our work to share the gospel of love that binds us. Our polity needs to reflect this vision. We envision a Philippine Central Conference wherein human dignity, human rights, and integrity of all people are upheld. We envision a United Methodist Church that respects and honors all people regardless of their race and ethnicity, political views, class, location, gender and gender identity, and sexual orientation. I believe that being Wesleyan means that we extend grace and love to all. We need to work for a church that promotes the highest standard of equality, justice, and fairness. There is too much arrogance, division, violence, and hate in our society. And unfortunately, even in our church, our division has wrought so much agony, frustrations, and pain in the body of Christ. Thus, our witness and mission to make disciples of Jesus for the transformation of the world has suffered. We are one in our struggle for unity. Extrajudicial killings, the murder of innocent lives, political and economic oppression, and even the murder of church people like pastors and deaconesses fighting for justice are the historical elements that continue to ensure us in the Philippines to raise our voices in this pre-general conference gathering that we are strongly united. We are deeply engaged in mission and strongly committed in service. As a central conference, we have a distinct missional context. We have a diverse culture with many languages. We minister in a country of 1,641 islands. We have 3 episcopal areas: Baguio, our Ilocano region, Manila, Tagalog region, and Davao, Visayan region. We have differences in culture, location, language, and theological leanings, but we are united in being a United Methodist. Our voice as a central conference need to be heard and our context understood and respected. Central conference perspectives should not be an afterthought. In fact, we need to be an equal partner at the table envisioning the future of the church, and not just an audience whose perspectives are being asked after others have made plans and decisions that affect our mission work. This demands equity and respect. Whatever happens after General Conference 2020, we can assure you, that the Philippine Central Conference will remain part of the United Methodist Church. Our joint position as a Philippine Central Conference, as a Central Conference of the United Methodist in the Philippines, are intensely opposed to any move that dissolves the United Methodist Church. We value the witness of the early church as shown in the book of Acts of the Apostles, wherein division and schism were avoided and the unity in mission was their highest aspiration. The Philippine Central Conference College of Bishops passed a unity statement dated last August 31, 2019. And this statement strongly embraced unity in mission and also promotes our desired structural legacy that we are proud of, and they are locality or contextuality. That is why we have local churches, annual conferences, and central conferences. Being responsive to our missional context is obligatory. Second, our connectionality in relationships. That is why there is a general conference and a council of bishops having a global identity and organic structure are necessary. The third one, globality and inclusiveness. That is why the United Methodist Church reaches out in mutual relations with all governments and civil communities that promote Christian values and principles. Wesley said, "The world is my parish." It is clear to us in the Philippine Central Conference that a church empowered by God's dynamic spirit and biblical wisdom requires that the structural legacies be maintained and promoted in any restructuring of the United Methodist Church. These principles are all opposed to the move to dissolve or splinter the United Methodist Church. To support effective mission work across the connection, our Philippine Central Conference of Bishops has recommended the following, and I quote, "First, the United Methodist Church is to be structured into regional conferences within which we remain central and jurisdictional conferences, annual conferences, and local churches. The United Methodist Church will remain as one global church in which regional, annual, and local conferences are organic parts, but have the authority to decide their witness, mission, and ministry, thus preserving locality and connectionality. Third, the Council of Bishops shall be retained as both the living organic symbol of the globality of the United Methodist Church and the mechanism for general and local oversight over all the United Methodist Church. These elements for restructuring the United Methodist Church will both preserve the organic integrity and identity of the United Methodist Church and make it free and responsive to the new world that is forming. Parallel to the resolution, the Reverend Jonathan Olanday, a General Conference delegate from Davao Episcopal area, submitted a petition dated September 18, 2019, entitled Oppose Dissolution and Preserve the Unity of the United Methodist Church. We believe keeping the United Methodist Church against dissolution and schism is affirmed by the preamble and Articles 4 and 5 and 6 of the United Methodist Church Constitution. The petition highlights the following principles that promote the unity and inclusiveness of the Church, described in the preamble and Article 4 and 5 and 6 of the United Methodist Constitution. First, any form of structure and relationship that defines and treats one part of the Church as a mere extension of another is colonial in nature and unjust. Second, contextualization is a missional, structural, and connectional endeavor. That is an expression of our historical unity and core heritage, a church order and discipline. Third, the diversity of our ministry and cultural context is real, but a unity rooted in fulfilling the mission of the church can be maintained by identifying such differences and allowing for contextual authority to be exercised equitably by both central and jurisdictional conferences or any regional structure formed by the General Conference. The petition asked the General Conference to suspend all actions furthering any dissolutions, disaffiliations, and separation plans in favor of preserving the unity of the Church in compliance with our Constitution and biblically founded values and the unity, inclusiveness, and redemptive grace and mission in our preamble, and the wisdom and practice of contextual central conferences authority in paragraph 31.5, paragraph 31.6, and paragraph 543. Second, authorize the connectional table and the standing committee on central conference matters to jointly study and submit a report with proposal to the next General Conference session that preserves and strengthens the unity of the Church in mission through a structured polity that affirms and values broad contextual ministry policies and practices, including parity in contextual authority among existing central and jurisdictional conferences, and or any future regional bodies established by the General Conference. The Christmas Covenant. As I close, let me share a bit about the Christmas Covenant. Together with Reverend Dr. B.D. Casadi here, and other Central Conference, General Conference delegates, and alternative delegates, I am a signatory to the Christmas Covenant. If you have not heard of it, I hope you will join us in conversations tonight at 6:45 p.m. at the Grandview Terrace just outside this hall. The Christmas Covenant is a vision coming from our Central Conferences that is guided by this frame, and I quote, "As a United Methodist from Central Conferences, we envision a church that connects globally, engage in mission together, respect contextual ministry settings, celebrates the diversity of God's creation in its many beautiful expressions, and values mutually empowering relationships in order to strengthen our core mission of evangelism, disciples, and social witness for the transformation of the world." This is our covenant. This Christmas Covenant legislation will focus on establishing a regional conference for the future United Methodist Church. The legislation is currently being written and will be passed by an annual conference from a Central Conference. Possibly, it will be the only restructured proposal from Central Conferences. We are claiming our place at the table. In conclusion, as we draw closer to General Conference this May, may we be one in prayer and strongly sustaining our possession, to stand to unity in mission, even if it's a risk-taking move. And in any event, the Philippine Central Conference will seek to sustain ourselves and be a part of the United Methodist Church. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. We still have 10 minutes, so we can take 2 to 3 questions from the floor. So if you have questions to any of the presenters, please go to the mic, state your name, your organization, and also your question.
I guess I'll be the first. I'm Jan Nelson. I'm a lay delegate from Oregon, Idaho. I think my question is mostly for Dr. Betty. The African conferences have been clear about their opposition to dividing the church. The African bishops have also said clearly that your conferences will not vote for changing the church rules around inclusion of LGBTQ people. Given those two realities, is there any of the plans that are being presented so far that a large number of African delegates would support?
Thank you for the question. I think I am not in good shoes to speak on behalf of all Africans here. Amen? Looking at different plans, right? Yes, because I think we are just giving avenues, and the upcoming general conference where delegates will be there, I will be also among them. That's where each and every one will vote for, because we don't want to influence. Thank you.
Next question, please.
Hello.
Yes, please.
I'm Jay Brim, lay delegate from Rio, Texas. I'd like to ask all three of the panel members, as persons who have dealt with the adaptability of the Book of Discipline over the past number of years, however many years you've been involved, can you give us an idea of what the process is that central conferences go through to adapt their Book of Discipline for use, and how much of it is about the fact that you have to translate it into another language? Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to start?
I can start. Speaking from a Northern Europe and Eurasia Central Conference, our tradition is that the council of our Central Conference looks at the things that have been decided at General Conference when the version of the Book of Discipline comes out, so that we know what we're talking about. And then we look at mainly practicalities, meaning references to organizations that doesn't exist, or size of different annual conference bodies that has to be established. We make them smaller because we can't afford all those meetings and all these people. So we look at those kind of things. We look at things that just doesn't make sense in our culture. And there's stuff that doesn't make sense in our culture. Then there's legal stuff, some stuff that has been made a certain way because of US legislation, and we have different legislation in the different European states, so we have no use for that. But that is one way of interpreting our right to adapt. And I don't think the central conferences have one interpretation of that right. There are different interpretations of it. I can tell you that just last week, the German Central Conference executive announced the proposal that they're going to put in front of their Central Conference when it meets after General Conference, which is around these issues. And they have decided to remove all references to sexuality when it comes to marriage and ordination. So they're gonna scrap all those bits. No matter what comes out of General Conference, they're going to say, we have the right to adapt, away with it. That's another extreme, I don't know if I want to call it extreme, but that's one way of interpreting the right, and then there are more modest ones. And some Central Conference, I think, don't do anything at all. So that's my understanding of this. It's an elastic thing, and it hasn't been tested by anybody in General Conference or Judicial Council where the limit are. That's never been tested, what is the framework we can work within. So it's an interpretation.
Well, speaking from African experience, I think we have different contexts based on languages. I come from the country where we speak French, Swahili, and all other dialects, more than 200. There are some central conferences in Africa where they speak Portuguese, and some speak English. For your information, particularly for Congo Central Conference, we have a draft of our Book of Discipline. I think soon it will be published. And it is adapted to our own reality. You know just the position of Africans in terms of marriage. We have our own position. I think language is really a challenge, looking at interpretation of the Book of Discipline. But adaptation is the key.
For so long, the Philippine Central Conference is praying that we need to have our own Book of Discipline written in our contextual languages. In my personal understanding, our book of discipline now are not completely, they're not completely answer the need of our problems in the Philippines. So, as the previous speaker mentioned a while ago, there is a need in the Philippines to translate those, the book of discipline in different languages, Bisaya, Tagalog, or Ilocano, for us to have a deeper understanding and interpretation. Because majority of our, or 70% of our pastors or workers are not expert enough in defining or understanding the book of discipline. That's why, if it is written in our language, it could help us a lot, especially to our workers. Thank you.